Welcome to another edition of Green is Good Radio. We're so happy to have with us today Nicole McCann. She's the Food Campaign Director from Green America and GMO Inside campaign.
Yes, thank you for having me.
Well, you're more than welcome. And we got a lot to talk about today because there's a lot going on at Green America. Of course, there's a lot going on in your GMO Inside campaign. But before we get talking about all that great stuff and important stuff, talk a little bit about the Nicole McCann story and journey leading up to your position as the Food Campaigns Director.
Right, so I have a very interesting background when it comes to where I am right now. In undergrad in the college, I was studying fashion merchandising actually, and business and fashion, and realized just how detrimental it was for the environment. So that led me to go onto the environmental direction that I went. But I also particularly went towards a plant-based diet just on my own volition, and those two areas just intersected so nicely, the environmental impact of the fashion industry and food, and ultimately I realized that there were so many problems with the food industry in the United States that was really where I needed to focus my attention.
And then when did you join Green America?
I started right after New Year's this year, so January 6th, I believe, 2014.
So it was a fresh year, and you had a fresh start.
Right.
Got it. So talk a little bit about what you're doing at Green America, and then we'll get into the very important GMO Inside campaign that you've created and are working on there.
So I'm Food Campaigns Director at Green America, and I oversee all of our food campaigns, which the dominant one that we have going on right now is GMOinsideorg.
Okay.
And that is a coalition of individuals and businesses that are really working to grow the green economy and get GMOs and toxins out of our food and raise awareness about these issues and educate, but as well as build a social and environmentally just food system.
You know, Nicole, there was a funny online thing I saw just a week or so ago, or it could have been done on one of the late night funny talk shows, Kimmel or something, but they went around with and asked,
what is a GMO?
So before we even go further, explain to our listeners and our audience what GMO really is and why it's important. To why your campaign is so important for the future of our country and beyond.
Right. So GMO is a very genetically modified organism, and this is a very confused term across the board. And I think the confusion comes by the word modified. So one of the more accurate ways to describe it is genetically engineered, because GMO can only be created in a lab. So this is not in nature. And what happens is you are merging genes from different species, and you can only do it in a lab, primarily with a gene gun. So you're taking either bacteria or genes from a plant or animal or a virus and injecting it into the DNA of another cell.
Wow.
Or other DNA. So this is not natural. This is not modification. This is creating a brand new DNA structure.
Fully mutated.
Right.
Wow. And is this going on in all different across all of our food groups?
No, there's only 8 products that are genetically engineered at the moment.
Oh, okay.
However, so there are corn, soy, cotton, and cottonseed, which is pretty prevalent in our food system.
Wow.
Squash and zucchini, papaya, and I believe that one's it. We're looking to potentially see wheat come across as genetically engineered soon. So that's another area.
Okay.
But the thing is, the corn and soy are in almost every processed food on the market.
Wow.
Yeah.
Holy Toledo. So how is GMO relate? Well, why is it so important?
There are a lot of different risks. So you have environmental risk, you have corporate control, and then you have the health impacts. So with environmental risks, the main type of genetically engineered crop is either resistant to herbicides like glyphosate, and even more toxic ones coming out on the market that have been approved just within the past couple of weeks.
Wow.
So these herbicides are dumped onto these crops and they're resistant to them. So the risk is that we already are seeing super weeds. These weeds that are resistant to the current herbicides that are being used, like glyphosate, which is market called Roundup. And then you have Bt toxin, which is in corn. So this is a bacteria that is injected into the DNA of a corn plant so that every cell of the corn is producing this Bt bacteria. So that means this is consumed with every bite of that product that you're consuming. So there's risk for organic farmers and other farmers too that are not necessarily buying these crops. If the wind carries it over into their field, then they could be potentially sued by the seed companies because they are infringing on a patented seed.
So these environmental risks.
Absolutely.
Let's talk about the risks, the nutritional risks that all of us are exposed to because of this.
Right. So the unfortunate thing is that GMO crops or genetically engineered crops have not been proven safe for human consumption. And this is because it is proprietary information and the seed companies need to give permission for the seed to be tested independently without corporate funding. And this has not been the case. It's very difficult to do independent testing on these seeds because of the patents. And then you have the FDA and the EPA and the USDA, who are 3 different agencies that are regulating different parts of these seeds, rely on information supplied to them by the companies. They are not doing independent testing themselves on these. They say, okay, well, Monsanto said they're safe, so checkbox, checkbox, checkbox. Okay, they're fine. So they haven't been independently studied.
So the risks that we're being put at is...
We don't know.
We don't even know the risks.
Right. And I would add to that there's the argument that, well, we've been eating them for decades now, and there's been no sign that they are unhealthy or unsafe for us. But you haven't been able to identify just that in our food system. So it's in conjunction with everything else in our food system. So we need to be able to separate it and test it by itself.
Right, and cancer and autoimmune diseases and so many other things are still, in many areas, are still going up.
Right.
So we don't know where it's correlated to now.
In addition to those pesticides that I mentioned already that have definitely been associated with different diseases and health problems, in addition to environmental pollution in our waterways. So that is very much proven, the pesticides and herbicides used on these crops.
And to date, it's pretty much been unregulated, and the big food companies get away unfettered.
It's unfortunate because there's a lot of money in politics, so it's up to us to raise our voices and speak about what we feel we want these agencies and companies to do. Like, it's very important that everyday consumers actually tell the companies what we want.
These kind of campaigns are the necessary campaigns to put the right kind of pressure on are going to have to come from the bottom up, not the top down.
Well, I would say that it's important to become an engaged citizen. So if you are looking at the legislative aspect, all of these are complementary. So you need to be an engaged citizen in your consumer dollars as well as in your political activism.
Great
so
point.
It all goes together.
What other risks that you want to make us aware of before we go into some of the solutions and some of the important campaigns that you're working on to fight this issue?
I would just also like to point out that these genetically engineered crops are maintaining a monocrop culture type of agriculture, which we know that in the best thriving environment, it's biodiverse. So a monocrop system is not diverse at all.
Great
so
point.
We're killing the soil. So our soil is dying, and we need to replace the soil. We need to replace the nutrients in the soil with nitrogen fertilizer, contributing to climate change.
And what other risks from the genetically engineering that we're creating? What's the association with climate change then?
Right. So the pesticides, number one.
That is.
Right. And the nitrogen fertilizer is made from fossil fuels.
Got it.
So that right there, when we have the nutrients from a diverse system, we don't need to add these extra fossil fuel chemicals into the soil. So that right there, the nitrogen it's multiple angles. So we're using the energy and we're speeding up the nitrogen cycle in our environment.
Let's talk about dairy, which is something that doesn't get a lot of coverage.
Right.
You know, when people talk about being vegetarian, that's one thing.
Right.
Veganism, which is unbelievably on the rise, I believe, is the removal of dairy products.
Right.
And some of the harmful things that are contained, within dairy, such as casein and other things. Talk a little bit about the genetically engineering of dairy and how that grossly affects the quality and the nutritional value or the potential harms that dairy could have if ingested with people.
Well, it's interesting because there's different aspects with dairy. So when we are talking about dairy, we are bringing attention to the fact that the majority of genetically engineered crops in the United States actually go to the animal feed industry.
Wow.
Not just what we're eating ourselves,
Great
but
point.
they go to maintain the factory farm system.
Right.
The factory farm system needs cheap genetically engineered grain to maintain that type of functionality. And with dairy, it's often not the product that people associate with factory farms. They think beef, chickens, poultry, and hogs.
Right.
But dairy is very much, and I would say even more of an impact because you are contributing to hamburger meat and veal cows as well as these harmful living conditions that dairy cows are kept in. So the cows are eating these genetically engineered crops with the pesticide residue also, which that's not their natural diet. They're meant to be pasture raised.
Right.
And a natural lifespan of dairy cow is 15 to 20 years, but in a dairy operation, they only live 4 to 5 years. And as soon as their dairy production drops, they're culled from the herd. So then they're also, when they have calves, their calves are removed from them in 2 to 3 days after birth, which a dairy calf can nurse for years, for a couple of years. So there's that. And then there's the aspect of growth hormones, which fluid milk, just to clarify a point, fluid white milk is only considered genetically modified itself if the cow has been injected with growth hormone, which is RBGH.
Okay.
So when we're campaigning on the GMO crops that go into dairy or animal feed, we say from cows that are fed genetically engineered feed. So we have to be accurate in those two descriptions.
It's a bifurcated issue, you're saying.
Yes.
One has to do with hormones, one has to do with feed that goes to the... Okay.
Right. Mm-hmm.
And your campaign surrounds the feed issue.
Yes, because it's so prevalent. It takes the majority of the genetically engineered crops in the United States for that type of operation.
Let's talk a little bit about what you're doing. These two organizations, and let's break it down for our listeners. One is the greater organization that you work for, which is Green America,
yes.
and this is just one of your regular magazines that come out, and it's greenamerica.org for our listeners out there, or for our viewers out there that want to get more engaged.
Right.
Great organization, our company is involved, and members. But then within that is your GMO Inside campaign, which is GMOinsideorg. GMOinsideorg.
Right.
Talk a little bit about the concept of the What the Starbucks campaign that you've launched and is very important to what's going on right now.
Right. So Starbucks is an industry leader. They are a company that is the largest coffee company in the world.
Right.
But I would argue that they are more of a milk company than a coffee company, because if you have a venti latte, it is 18 ounces of milk and 2 ounces of coffee. So that's this much milk and this much coffee. So you're buying a cup of milk.
Great point.
So if you go into a Starbucks and you order a latte, if you're walking up to the cash register, you'll see that they have organic milk in the case. They do not serve any organic milk at all for any of their drinks. They do have organic soy milk, so they understand the importance of needing organic soy products. However, the cows that are producing the milk that they source are not fed organic soy. So there's a disconnect there. And our Starbucks campaign is drawing attention. So GMOs are a jumping off point. You can talk about the factory farms, you can talk about the antibiotics that go into the factory farm system, and particularly dairy cows and mastitis. But you can also talk about the pesticides on the GE crops and corporate control. And the milk industry has phenomenal, I guess phenomenal is actually a positive word, they have very difficult to swallow corporate control of the milk industry. So the Starbucks campaign is really about...
Which was launched when? I'm interrupting.
March, yes.
March of this year.
Yes.
Okay, so you launched that, and how's it been going, and what's the purpose? Like, what do you want our listeners and viewers to do? How can they join and explain the purpose?
Right. So the purpose is to get organic milk at Starbucks, and that is to raise awareness about the impact that it could have on our agricultural system.
Great purpose, great mission.
Yeah.
Love it.
And we have over 150,000 petition signatures so far. We've had other really great national organizations get on board and help us out, like Organic Consumers Association, Food Democracy Now!, Friends of the Earth, Food Revolution Network, Cornucopia, you name it. We have a lot of partners. And we haven't heard anything back from Starbucks. So we're keeping escalating and keeping moving, and they're an industry leader. They're not going away. We just need to raise our voices loudly enough and keep pushing. And the thing with our campaigns and with the corporate activism is we don't stop. We're not going to go away. So we're just going to keep pushing.
And talk about what kind of difference that would make. Mm-hmm. Let's assume and hope for the best.
Right.
Work for the best.
Right.
As you're doing. And let's say in the near future, within the next 6 months, they meet with you and they agree. Mm-hmm. And then they start making the change to organic. Explain the wonderful domino effect that would have.
Right. So farmers need incentive. They will not take the risk of switching over their farm systems unless they have secure contracts. So if a large corporation like Starbucks makes the commitment to transition with an orderly transition, we're realistic. We know it can't happen overnight. If they make the commitment to work it out over the next 5 to 8 years, then a farmer will have an incentive to change over their farm to organic and start providing. And then what will happen? All of Starbucks competitors will start also offering organic milk. And then we'll see a drastic drop in the factory farm system. It won't be economical anymore.
The demand will drop for the feed, the engineered feed.
Ripple effect all along the supply chain.
And those who want to continue enjoying the great Starbucks products are out there.
We'll have a better product.
Have a better product.
Mm-hmm.
When it comes down to these kind of decisions, Nicole, is it a massive cost difference between the milk products they're purchasing today versus a potential organic product?
There is a cost difference, but with an orderly transition, you have the ability to even out that cost difference, where it's not overnight where the prices will spike. It's a slow transition.
And they have the benefit, as you pointed out earlier, of scale.
Economies of scale.
Right,
mm-hmm.
right.
Absolutely.
So for our viewers and listeners out there, how can they assist you in this very important campaign, GMO Inside campaign?
Right. So the number one thing that you can do is go to GMOinsideorg/Starbucks and sign the petition. That is really important, that they hear from people that they want organic milk. That's number one. Additionally, you can go, social media is huge. You can go to the Starbucks Facebook page and post on there. We have graphics that you can share. You can put it on their Facebook page and tell them that you want organic milk.
So on the GMOinsideorg website, you have like a toolkit.
Absolutely.
That people can use.
Step 1, 2, 3, 4, 5.
Oh, wonderful.
Mm-hmm. And making it easy.
Yeah, that's so smart. And you're giving people, you're empowering them with the toolkit. Mm-hmm. And so far, 150,000 people.
More, yeah.
And you could sign the petition online as well.
Mm-hmm.
That's great. So
easy.
For our listeners out there, go online, sign the petition on GMOinsideorg, and use the toolkit, use your social media skills, and help really change the world for the better. Nicole, thank you so much for your time today.
Thank you.
We want to have you back on again to give our listeners and viewers an update on this campaign.
Absolutely.
We want to help you make it a success.
Thank you.
It really should be a success for everyone's benefit. And again, to learn more about all of Nicole's great work at Green America and the GMO Inside campaign, go to greenamerica.org. See the magazine right there, or GMOinsideorg. Sign up, use a toolkit, make a difference, change the world. Thanks again for watching Green is Good.
Thank you.